She looked at the young man's boarding pass, then up at his hoodie, and sneered. "Boy, you are undeniably lost. The back of the bus is that way." Beatrice Sterling thought she was just putting a thug in his place. She thought her platinum status and her husband's money made her untouchable at 30,000 feet. But what she didn't know was that the quiet teenager she was humiliating wasn't just a passenger. He was the one person on that flight with the power to end her entire career before the wheels even left the tarmac. When the pilot slammed the brakes during pushback, Beatrice smiled, thinking she had won. She had no idea she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. This is the story of Flight 902 and the justice that hit harder than a jumbo jet. The air inside the jet bridge at JFK's Terminal 4 smelled of jet fuel and damp carpet, a scent that usually triggered a headache for most travelers. But for 19-year-old Jeremiah J.J. Reynolds, it smelled like opportunity. J.J. adjusted the strap of his backpack. He was dressed for comfort, not for a runway show. He wore a charcoal grey, oversized hoodie from a niche streetwear brand, black joggers, and a pair of pristine Jordan 1s. To the untrained eye, he looked like any other teenager from Brooklyn. To a trained eye, the watch peeking out from under his left sleeve, a Patek Philippe Nautilus with a discreet leather band, would have signaled that there was more to JJ than met the eye. He wasn't flashy. He was focused. He approached the gate agent, a tired-looking woman named Brenda, who had been dealing with delayed flights for 6 hours. She didn't look up immediately. "Zone 1 only right now, sir. General boarding is in 20 minutes, she mumbled, gesturing vaguely toward the seating area. JJ didn't move. He smiled, a soft, disarming expression. "I know, Mum. I'm in 1A. Brenda paused. She looked up, her eyes scanning his hoodie, then his face. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, a microaggression JJ was used to, before taking the phone from his hand to scan the QR code. The machine beeped green. Priority access, first class. Brenda's eyebrows shot up, but she recovered quickly. "Oh, my apologies, Mr. Reynolds. Enjoy your flight to London." "Thank you, Brenda. Hope your shift gets easier," JJ said, glancing at her name tag. As he walked down the jet bridge, the heavy thud of heels struck the floorboards behind him. They were moving fast, aggressive and sharp. "Excuse me! Excuse me!" a voice rang out, shrill and demanding. JJ moved slightly to the right to let the person pass, but the footsteps stopped right at his heels. He turned his head. Standing there was a woman who looked like she had been cut out of a magazine from 1995 and pasted into the modern world. Beatrice Sterling was in her mid-50s, wearing a Chanel tweed blazer that was slightly too tight, clutching a Birkin bag as if it contained nuclear launch codes. Her blonde hair was lacquered into an immobile helmet. "You're blocking the flow," she snapped, brushing past him, her oversized bag hitting JJ's shoulder hard. She didn't apologize. She didn't even look back. JJ rubbed his shoulder, exhaling a slow breath. Headphones on, world off, he told himself. Just get to London, sign the papers and get home. He entered the aircraft. The first-class cabin of the Boeing 777 was a sanctuary of soft, ambient lighting and navy blue leather. He found seat 1A. It was a lie-flat pod, the ultimate luxury. He stowed his backpack in the overhead bin, taking out only a leather-bound notebook and his noise-cancelling headphones. He sat down, buckling his belt, and closed his eyes for a moment. "Excuse me? Hello?" The voice was back. JJ opened his eyes. Beatrice Sterling was standing in the aisle, staring at him. She was holding her boarding pass like a weapon. "Yes?" JJ asked politely. "You are in my seat," she stated, her voice loud enough that the flight attendant, Soraya, looked up from the galley. JJ checked his phone again. 1A. "This is 1A, ma'am," Beatrice scoffed, a dry, ugly sound. "Don't play games with me. The stewardess probably upgraded you by mistake because the flight is overbooked, but this is paid first class. I have reserved 1A. I always sit in 1A. Soraya, the flight attendant, hurried over. She was young, perhaps 25, with a tight bun and a nervous smile. She had seen women like Beatrice 1,000 times. "Is there a problem, Mrs. Sterling?" Soraya asked, her voice soothing. "Yes, there is a massive problem," Beatrice said, pointing a manicured finger at JJ. "This child is in my seat. I specifically requested the window bulkhead." Soraya took Beatrice's boarding pass. She looked at it, then looked at the seat numbers. "Mrs. Sterling, you are in 1B. That's the aisle seat, right next to this one. Mr. Reynolds is in 1A. Beatrice's face turned a shade of crimson that clashed with her blazer. She looked at JJ, then at Soraya. "That's impossible. My assistant knows I only fly window. I'm sorry, but the manifest is clear," Soraya said firmly but kindly. "Please, take your seat so we can continue boarding. We have a tight slot for takeoff." Beatrice glared at JJ. It wasn't just annoyance. It was pure, distilled contempt. She threw her bag onto seat 1B and sat down, huffing loudly. "Unbelievable," she muttered, loud enough for JJ to hear. "First they ruin the neighborhood, now they ruin the airline." JJ felt the heat rise in his neck. He gripped his notebook tighter. "Don't engage," he thought. "She wants a reaction. Do not give her the satisfaction." He put his headphones on, but he didn't play any music. He needed to hear what she was doing. He needed to be aware. The boarding continued. Other passengers filed past. Businessmen in suits, a famous actress in row 2 wearing sunglasses, a tech CEO in row 3. They all glanced at the odd pairing in row 1, the angry socialite, and the kid in the hoodie. Beatrice spent the next 10 minutes aggressively typing on her phone, her acrylic nails clicking loudly against the glass screen. Then she made a call. "Ricky." "Yes, I'm on board," she said, her voice piercing through JJ's noise-cancelling feature. "It's a disaster already. You won't believe what they've put next to me. Some affirmative action case. He looks like a drug dealer, Ricky. Hood up, slouching. It's terrifying. I don't feel safe." JJ froze. "Drug dealer?" He turned his head slowly. Beatrice was looking right at him while speaking into the phone, her eyes cold and challenging. She wanted him to hear. She wanted him to know that she saw him as a threat, as dirt. "I'm going to speak to the captain," she said into the phone. "I can't fly 7 hours next to someone who looks like he's about to rob me." JJ took a deep breath. He unbuckled his seatbelt. Soraya, the flight attendant, saw him move and rushed over, sensing the tension was about to snap. "Mr. Reynolds, can I get you a pre-departure beverage? Champagne? Orange juice?" "Water, please," JJ said, his voice steady. "And Soraya?" "Yes?" "Can you please ask this woman to lower her voice? She's making personal attacks against me, and I'd prefer not to file a harassment complaint before we even take off." Beatrice dropped her phone from her ear. "Harassment? You listen to me, little boy. I am a Diamond Medallion member. I have flown this airline since before you were born. I don't harass. I state facts." "Mrs. Sterling," Soraya intervened, her tone hardening. "Please, we need to keep the cabin peaceful." Beatrice laughed, a cruel, mirthless sound. "Peaceful? Then get security to check his bag. I smell marijuana. It's reeking off him." The cabin went silent. The businessman in 2A lowered his newspaper. The actress in 2B took off her sunglasses. JJ didn't smell like marijuana. He smelled of expensive cologne, Oud Wood by Tom Ford, and soap. "That is a lie," JJ said, turning to face her fully for the first time. His eyes were dark and intense. "And it's slander. "It's probable cause," Beatrice shouted. "I know your type. You get a little money, maybe from selling poison to kids, and you think you can sit up here with the civilized people." "Ma'am, stop!" Soraya shouted, raising her hands. "I want the captain," Beatrice screamed. "Get the pilot. I am not flying with a criminal." This was the spark. The powder keg had just been lit. The cockpit door was open, as it usually is during boarding. Captain Tom Miller, a man with 30 years of flying experience and a jawline that looked like it was carved from granite, was running through the pre-flight checklist with his first officer, Dave. "Fuel load checked," Dave said. "Checked," Miller replied. "Captain," Soraya's voice came over the interphone, breathless. "We have a situation in first. Row 1. Miller sighed. "Is it the catering again? I told them we need the gluten-free meal for 4A. "No, Captain. It's a passenger dispute. Verbal altercation. Racial slurs are being thrown around. It's ugly." Miller's hands paused over the throttle quadrant. He turned in his seat. "Racial slurs? On my plane?" "Yes, sir. Seat 1B is targeting 1A. She's demanding he be removed. She's accusing him of smelling like drugs." "Does he?" "No, sir. He's been perfectly polite. She's the aggressor." Miller unbuckled his harness. "Keep the door open. I'm coming back." Back in the cabin, the atmosphere was suffocating. Beatrice Sterling had worked herself into a frenzy. She had stood up and was now looming over JJ, who remained seated, though his fists were clenched so tightly his knuckles were white. "I want to see your ticket stub," Beatrice demanded, reaching out as if to grab his phone. "Don't touch me," JJ warned, his voice low. "You stole it. You probably stole a credit card to buy it." She looked around at the other passengers, seeking allies. "Why is no one doing anything? This is safety. He could have a weapon." "Lady, sit down," the man in 2A grumbled. "The kid hasn't done anything." "You shut up," Beatrice snapped at the man. "You're part of the problem. Woke liberals letting criminals run wild." Suddenly, the plane jolted. The tug had connected. They were commencing pushback. The safety briefing video began to play on the screens, a cheerful voice talking about seatbelts, while a hate crime was brewing in the front row. Beatrice realized the plane was moving. Panic set in. If they took off, she was stuck next to him. "No, stop the plane!" she screamed. She reached up and slammed her hand against the call button repeatedly. "We are not taking off. I am missing my earring." The cabin went deadly silent again. "What?" Soraya asked, stepping forward. "My diamond earring." Beatrice clutched her left earlobe. It was a 2-carat diamond stud. "It's gone. I had it when I sat down. He took it." She pointed a shaking finger at JJ. "He reached into my bag when I was putting it up. I saw him. He's a thief." JJ looked at her, stunned. "I haven't left my seat. I haven't touched your bag." "Liar! Search him! Search him right now!" Beatrice was hysterical. Tears, fake or real, it was hard to tell, streaming down her face. "That earring is worth $50,000. I demand you arrest him." JJ closed his eyes. He knew how this looked. A white woman crying, claiming a black teen stole jewelry. History was not on his side. He felt the familiar cold pit of fear in his stomach, the one his father had warned him about. Always keep your hands visible. Speak clearly. Don't make sudden movements. JJ slowly raised his hands and placed them on the back of the seat in front of him. "I did not take your earring. You can check the floor. You can check my pockets. But I did not take it. He swallowed it, or he hid it in that hood." Beatrice lunged forward, her hand snatching at JJ's hood. "Hey!" JJ shouted, batting her hand away. "Assault! He hit me!" Beatrice shrieked. "He hit me!" That was it. The plane shuddered to a violent halt. The engines spooled down. The tug driver had slammed on the brakes on the pilot's command. The intercom crackled. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Miller. We are stopping pushback. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Flight attendants, prepare for gate return." Beatrice smirked, wiping her tears. She looked down at JJ with a look of pure, toxic triumph. "You're done, boy. You are going to jail. And I'm going to make sure they throw away the key." JJ looked at her, his expression unreadable. He wasn't scared anymore. The fear had been replaced by a cold, calculating resolve. He slowly reached into his pocket. Beatrice flinched and pulled out his phone. He placed it face down on the armrest. It had been recording audio for the last 10 minutes. The cockpit door opened. Captain Miller emerged, his hat tucked under his arm, his face like a thundercloud. He walked into the first-class cabin, his eyes scanning the scene. "Who is screaming?" Miller asked, his voice booming in the small space. Beatrice straightened her blazer. She stepped forward, playing the victim perfectly. "Captain, thank God. This individual stole my diamond earring and then assaulted me when I tried to get it back. I want him off this plane immediately." Miller looked at Beatrice. Then he looked at JJ. Miller's eyes narrowed. He took a step closer to seat 1A. He looked at the young man in the hoodie, really looked at him. JJ looked up. "Captain Miller." Miller blinked. A flash of recognition crossed his face. He leaned in, squinting slightly. "JJ? Jeremiah?" "Yes, sir," JJ said calmly. Beatrice laughed. "Oh, wonderful. He's probably conned you too. Don't listen to him, Captain. He's a thief." Miller held up a hand to silence Beatrice. He didn't take his eyes off JJ. "Jeremiah, did you touch this woman?" "No, Captain. She grabbed my hood. I blocked her hand. I have not moved from this seat since boarding." "And the earring?" "I haven't seen it." Beatrice stomped her foot. "Of course he says that. Search him. Search his bag." Miller turned to Beatrice. His demeanor was icy. "Ma'am, you are accusing this young man of grand larceny and assault. These are serious felonies. If I call the police on board, this plane is not going to London. It is going to stay right here for hours. Everyone on board will miss their connections. Are you absolutely certain?" "I am a sterling," Beatrice announced. "I don't lie. He stole it. Call the police. I want him in handcuffs." Miller looked at Soraya. "Soraya, call Port Authority Police. Tell them we have a theft accusation and an assault claim in first class. Tell them to bring a detective." "Thank you, Captain," Beatrice said, smoothing her skirt, looking at JJ with a sneer. Finally, some competence. Miller looked at JJ, a strange look in his eyes. Not anger, but something closer to apology. "Sit tight, son. We'll get this sorted." JJ nodded. "I'm not going anywhere, Captain. But you might want to call my mother, too." Beatrice laughed out loud. "Your mother? What's she going to do? Come down here and beg for mercy?" JJ turned to Beatrice, a small, sad smile playing on his lips. "No, she's probably going to wonder why one of her planes is delayed." Beatrice frowned. "Her planes?" JJ didn't answer. He just looked out the window as the jet bridge began to move back toward the aircraft door. The police were coming. But Beatrice Sterling had forgotten the first rule of high-stakes gambling. Never go all in unless you know exactly who is sitting across the table. The aircraft door reopened with a mechanical hiss that sounded like a heavy sigh of defeat. The cool air from the jet bridge rushed in, clashing with the stifling, heated atmosphere of the first-class cabin. 2 Port Authority officers boarded first, their hands resting near their belts, followed closely by a man in a rumpled suit, Detective Harrison. Harrison looked like he had seen everything the airport had to offer, and none of it impressed him. He scanned the cabin, his eyes landing immediately on the tension at the front, the weeping woman in 1B and the stoic young man in 1A. "All right, folks, settle down," Harrison said, his voice gravelly. "Captain says we have a theft and an assault. Who's the complainant?" "I am," Beatrice shot out of her seat, waving her hand as if hailing a cab. "Officer, thank God. This criminal stole a $50,000 diamond earring and then physically attacked me when I tried to retrieve it. I want him arrested immediately." Harrison pulled out a small notepad. "Name?" "Beatrice Sterling. My husband is Ricky Sterling, of Sterling Hedge Funds. You can look him up." Harrison didn't look impressed. He turned to JJ. "And you are?" "Jeremiah Reynolds," JJ said, remaining seated. He kept his hands visible on his lap. "Stand up, son," Harrison said, not unkindly, but with authority. JJ stood up. At 6'2", he towered over Beatrice, which made her take a nervous step back. "Turn around, hands on the overhead bin," Harrison ordered. "Officer, is this necessary?" Captain Miller interjected from the cockpit doorway. "I can vouch for—" "Captain, please let me do my job," Harrison said, cutting him off. "If there's an allegation of a 50 grand theft, I have to check for the property." JJ complied. He turned around, placing his palms flat on the luggage bin. He felt the detective's hands patting down his sides, checking his pockets, running down his legs. It was a humiliation he had seen in movies, a humiliation his father had warned him about. But feeling it in front of a cabin full of strangers was a different kind of burn. He could feel the eyes of the other passengers boring into his back. The whispers had started. "I knew it. He looks like trouble. Why do they even let kids like that in first class?" "Nothing on his person," Harrison announced, stepping back. Beatrice's face twisted. "He hid it. Check his bag. He put it in his bag before you got here." Harrison looked at JJ. "Is that your backpack in the bin?" "Yes, sir." "Do I have your permission to search it, or do we need to wait for a warrant?" "Search it," JJ said calmly. "I have nothing to hide." Harrison pulled the backpack down. He unzipped the main compartment. Beatrice leaned in, her eyes wide, expecting to see bricks of cash or drugs. Harrison pulled out a MacBook Pro, then a leather-bound folio. He opened the folio. It wasn't full of rap lyrics or gang signs. It was filled with complex architectural blueprints and legal contracts stamped with confidential. Harrison paused, looking at the documents. He glanced at JJ with a raised eyebrow, then dug deeper. He pulled out a small velvet box. "Aha!" Beatrice shrieked, pointing a manicured finger. "That's it! That's where he put it!" Harrison opened the box. Inside sat a men's watch, a Patek Philippe Nautilus, rose gold. It was worth more than Beatrice's car. "Is this yours?" Harrison asked JJ. "Yes, it was a gift from my grandfather for my 18th birthday. I prefer not to wear it while sleeping on the plane." Harrison inspected the watch. It was clearly a men's watch, and clearly not a diamond stud earring. He put it back. He finished searching the bag. He checked the side pockets. He even checked the lining. "Mrs. Sterling," Harrison said, zipping the bag back up. "There is no earring in this bag. There is no earring on this young man." The cabin was silent. Beatrice's face went from triumphant to pale, then to a mottled red of fury. "Then he swallowed it," she screamed, her voice cracking. "He saw me looking, and he swallowed it. You have to take him to the hospital and X-ray him. I am not letting him get away with this." "Mom, I can't detain someone on a medical hunch without probable cause." Harrison sighed, looking tired. "Did anyone see him take the earring?" Beatrice looked around the cabin, wild-eyed. You in 2A, you saw him reach for me." The businessman in 2A shook his head. "Lady, I saw you bumping into him. I didn't see him touch you until you grabbed his hoodie. Honestly, you're the one who looks like the aggressor here." "How dare you?" Beatrice spat. "You're all in on it. This is a conspiracy. She turned back to Harrison. "If you don't arrest him, I will sue this airline. I will sue the police department. And I will personally ensure you are directing traffic in Queens for the rest of your miserable career." Harrison stiffened. His patience had evaporated. "Ma'am, threatening an officer is not a good way to find your jewelry." "I want him off this plane." Beatrice stomped her foot. "I refuse to fly with a thief. Captain, remove him. It's him or me." Captain Miller stepped forward. He had been watching the scene unfold with a jaw so tight a muscle was twitching in his cheek. He looked at JJ, who was calmly putting his backpack back into the bin. "Mr. Reynolds," Miller said softly, "are you okay?" "I'm fine, Captain," JJ said, dusting off his hoodie. "Just another Tuesday." "It's him or me," Beatrice screamed again. "Right now." "Well," Captain Miller said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerously calm. "If it's a choice, Mrs. Sterling, I think the decision is quite easy." "Good," Beatrice huffed, straightening her blazer. "Get his trash off my flight." "Actually," Miller said, crossing his arms, "Detective Harrison, before we make any decisions, I'd like you to do one more search." "Where?" Harrison asked. "Seat 1B, Miller said, pointing to Beatrice's seat. "And Mrs. Sterling's bag." Beatrice gasped. "My bag? You want to search me? I am the victim." "If the earring isn't on him, it has to be somewhere," Miller reasoned. "And since you claim it vanished while you were sitting there, we need to be thorough." "I refuse!" Beatrice clutched her Birkin. "This is a violation of my civil rights." "Mrs. Sterling," Harrison said, stepping toward her, "you just accused a man of a felony. If the evidence is in your possession, that's filing a false police report. Open the bag." Beatrice hesitated. Her hands shook. She looked at the door, but it was blocked by officers. She looked at JJ, who was just watching her with those dark, unyielding eyes. With a trembling hand, she unclasped the Birkin. Detective Harrison took the bag from her. He placed it on the center console between seats 1A and 1B. He began to sift through the contents. A heavy wallet, a cosmetic case, a bottle of prescription pills, a silk scarf. He pulled the scarf out. Clink. A small sparkling object fell from the folds of the silk and hit the plastic console with a distinct, sharp sound. Everyone froze. There, glistening under the LED cabin lights, was a large, solitaire diamond stud earring. "Is this the stolen item?" Harrison asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Beatrice stared at the earring. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. He must have put it there. He planted it. He's a magician or a pickpocket. He slipped it into my bag when I wasn't looking to frame me." "Lady," the man in 2A shouted, "he hasn't been within 3 feet of your bag since you sat down." "Mrs. Sterling," Harrison said, his face hardening into a scowl, "you have wasted police time. You have delayed a transatlantic flight, and you have falsely accused this young man of a crime." "No! No!" Beatrice was backing away now. "I made a mistake. It must have fallen off. It was an accident. But he still assaulted me. He grabbed my hand." "We have witnesses that say you grabbed him," Harrison corrected. Captain Miller stepped into the center of the aisle. The drama was peaking, but the hammer hadn't dropped yet. The captain looked at Beatrice with a gaze that could freeze jet fuel. "Mrs. Sterling," Miller said, "I am removing you from this flight." "What?" Beatrice shrieked. "You can't. I'm platinum. I'm a Sterling. You are kicking me off? Kick him off. He's the one who made me nervous." "I am removing you for disruptive behavior, filing a false report, and verbal assault of a fellow passenger," Miller stated. "Grab your things." "I will not." Beatrice sat down in 1B and buckled her seatbelt. "I am not moving. If you want me off, you'll have to drag me off. And I will sue this entire airline into bankruptcy. Do you know who my husband is? He plays golf with the CEO of this airline. I will have your job, Captain. I will have your wings stripped." She looked at JJ. "And you, I will find out who you are. I will destroy you. You think you're smart? You're nobody." JJ finally moved. He reached for his phone, which had been recording the entire time. He stopped the recording and tapped the screen a few times. "Captain Miller?" JJ said, his voice cutting through Beatrice's rant. "Yes, JJ?" "She mentioned she knows the CEO. Can we test that theory?" Beatrice laughed. "You think you can call the CEO? You delusional little—" JJ hit the FaceTime button. The cabin was quiet enough that everyone heard the ringing tone. Brrring, brrring. A face appeared on the screen. It was a woman with sharp, elegant features, sitting in a boardroom with a view of the Manhattan skyline behind her. She looked busy, but when she saw JJ, her expression softened into a smile. "Jeremiah? Honey, aren't you supposed to be in the air? Why are you calling me?" Beatrice froze. She recognized the face. She had seen it on the cover of Forbes and in the in-flight magazine, tucked in the seat pocket in front of her. It was Elizabeth Reynolds, the CEO of Reynolds Global Group, the woman who owned the airline. "Hi, Mum," JJ said, holding the phone up so the screen faced Beatrice. "I'm sorry to bother you. We're still at the gate at JFK." "Mum," Beatrice whispered, the color draining from her face so fast she looked like a corpse. "Why are you delayed?" Elizabeth Reynolds asked, her voice sharpening. "Is it a mechanical issue? Is Miller there?" "Captain Miller is here," JJ said. "But the delay is actually due to a passenger in seat 1B, Mrs. Beatrice Sterling. She accused me of stealing her diamond earring and demanded the police strip search me." On the screen, Elizabeth's face went stone cold. "She did what?" "The police are here," JJ continued. "They searched me, found nothing. Then they found the earring in her own bag. Now she's refusing to deplane and threatening to have Captain Miller fired because she claims her husband plays golf with you." JJ turned the phone so the camera faced Beatrice. "Mum, this is Mrs. Sterling. Mrs. Sterling, this is Elizabeth Reynolds. I believe you wanted to speak to the manager?" Beatrice was shaking so violently her teeth chattered. Mrs. Reynolds, there's been a misunderstanding." Elizabeth Reynolds didn't shout. She didn't scream. She spoke with the quiet, terrifying authority of a woman who controlled a fleet of 300 aircraft. "Mrs. Sterling," Elizabeth said, her voice amplified by JJ's phone speakers. "I don't play golf, I work, and I certainly do not know your husband, but I do know this. You have insulted my son. You have wasted my fuel, you have delayed my passengers, and you have abused my crew." I didn't know he was your son," Beatrice stammered. "He was wearing a hoodie. He looked like a teenager," Elizabeth cut in. "Or did he look like a target for your prejudice? Listen to me very closely, Mrs. Sterling. You are banned, not just from this flight. You are banned from this airline. You are banned from our partner airlines. You are placed on our internal no-fly list effective immediately. Your status is revoked. Your miles are voided." "You can't do that," Beatrice cried. "I own the planes, Mrs. Sterling. I can do whatever I please. Now get off my aircraft before I have the police charge you with trespassing on top of filing a false report." Elizabeth looked at the screen again. "Captain Miller?" "Yes, ma'am," Miller said, leaning in. "Ensure she is removed. Apologize to the other passengers for me, and get my son to London. He has a contract to sign." "Copy that, Mrs. Reynolds." "Bye, Mum," JJ said. "Love you, JJ. Don't let the haters stop the grind." The call ended. JJ put the phone in his pocket and looked at Beatrice. She was slumped in her seat, defeated, destroyed. The platinum wall had crumbled. "Mrs. Sterling," Detective Harrison said, pulling a pair of handcuffs from his belt. "The captain wants you off. The owner wants you off. And since you're refusing to move, you are now trespassing. Turn around and put your hands behind your back." Beatrice screamed as the cool metal clicked around her wrists. "My husband will kill you. This is a mistake." "The only mistake," JJ said softly as she was dragged past him, "was thinking you could judge a book by its cover." As the police hauled a sobbing, handcuffed Beatrice down the aisle of first class, the businessman in 2A started to clap. Then the actress in 2B joined in. Within seconds, the entire cabin was applauding. JJ didn't clap. He just nodded to Captain Miller, put his noise-cancelling headphones back on, and turned to the window. He was ready to fly. But the story wasn't over. Karma has a way of echoing, and for Beatrice Sterling, the landing was going to be much rougher than the takeoff. While Flight 902 was cruising smoothly at 35,000 feet over the Atlantic, down on the ground, a digital hurricane was making landfall. Beatrice Sterling spent 6 hours in a holding cell at JFK's Port Authority precinct. The cell was cold, smelled of bleach and stale sweat, and the bench was bolted to the floor. For a woman who considered 400 thread count sheets a human right, this was hell. But the real hell was waiting for her outside. The actress in seat 2B, a rising star named Chloe, with 4 million Instagram followers, hadn't just watched the drama unfold. She had live-streamed the last 5 minutes of it. By the time Beatrice was being fingerprinted, the video titled "Entitled Karen Tries to Frame the Wrong Teen in First Class" had 5 million views. By the time her lawyer, a harried man named Stephen, arrived to post bail, it was trending #1 globally on X, formerly Twitter. The hashtag #FirstClassKaren was born. Stephen didn't look happy when he saw her. He didn't offer sympathy. He just handed her oversized sunglasses and a coat. "Put these on," Stephen said, his voice tight. "There are paparazzi outside." "Paparazzi?" Beatrice blinked, her mascara smudged. "For me? Good. I can tell my side of the story. I can explain how that thug threatened me." "Beatrice, shut up!" Stephen snapped. "Do not speak. Do not breathe. Just walk to the car." They pushed through a wall of flashing bulbs and shouting reporters. "Beatrice, is it true you faked the theft? Do you hate black teenagers, Mrs. Sterling? What do you have to say to Elizabeth Reynolds?" Beatrice was shoved into the back of a black sedan. She expected to see her husband, Ricky, but the back seat was empty. "Where is Ricky?" she asked, panic rising in her chest. Stephen sighed, starting the engine. "Ricky isn't coming." "Why? Is he working?" "He's doing damage control, Beatrice. Do you have any idea what you did?" Stephen handed her an iPad. "Look." Beatrice stared at the screen. It was a news report from CNBC. The headline read, "Sterling Hedge Fund bleeds $200 million in assets following CEO's wife racist meltdown." "Ricky's partners are revolting," Stephen explained as he merged onto the highway. "Major investors, pension funds, university endowments. They don't want their money managed by a guy whose wife goes viral for racial profiling and filing false police reports. The 'Do you know who my husband is?' line. That was the nail in the coffin. You dragged his name into your mess." Beatrice felt bile rise in her throat. "But it was a mistake. The earring fell." "And you accused the son of Elizabeth Reynolds of stealing it. Do you know who Reynolds Global is? They are one of the biggest institutional investors in Ricky's fund. Or were. They pulled their capital 30 minutes ago. You cost your husband 20% of his liquidity in an hour." Beatrice dropped the iPad. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably. The platinum wall, the money, the status. It was all dissolving like cotton candy in water. When she finally arrived at their penthouse on Park Avenue, the doorman, who usually greeted her with a smile, looked at the floor. He didn't hold the elevator door. She entered the apartment. It was quiet. Too quiet. Ricky was sitting in the living room, staring out at the city lights, a glass of scotch in his hand. Suitcases were lined up by the door. Her suitcases. "Ricky," she whispered. He didn't turn around. "I watched the video, Beatrice. It's edited. It's out of context. I heard you," Ricky said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "I heard the way you spoke to him. I heard the hate, and I saw the lies. You knew that earring wasn't stolen. You just wanted to hurt him. He was disrespectful. He was wearing a hoodie." Ricky stood up and threw his glass against the wall. It shattered, amber liquid dripping down the expensive wallpaper. Beatrice screamed. "He is a 19-year-old boy," Ricky roared. "And he acted with more class than you have ever shown in our 20 years of marriage. Do you know who called me? The board. They want me to step down as CEO. Temporary leave of absence, they said, until the heat dies down. You destroyed my career, Beatrice." "We can fix this," she sobbed, reaching for him. "We can sue." "There is no we," Ricky said, stepping back, looking at her with disgust. "I spoke to my lawyers. I'm filing for divorce, irreconcilable differences. And given the public nature of your actions, the prenup is ironclad regarding conduct detrimental to my reputation. You get nothing." "You can't do this," Beatrice shrieked, falling to her knees. "You did this," Ricky said, walking past her toward the bedroom to lock the door. "You did this to yourself. Get out. The driver will take you to your sisters in Jersey." Beatrice Sterling, the woman who ruled first class, was left alone in the foyer of her multi-million-dollar apartment, surrounded by Louis Vuitton luggage she would soon have to carry herself. 3 months later, the Queen's County Criminal Court was packed. It wasn't the trial of the century, but the first-class Karen case had captured the public's imagination. People wanted to see if the wealthy socialite would actually face consequences, or if her money would buy her a way out. JJ sat in the front row behind the prosecutor's table. He looked different than he had on the plane. He wore a tailored navy suit, a white, crisp shirt, and the same Patek Philippe watch. He looked older, sharper. His mother, Elizabeth Reynolds, sat beside him, her presence commanding silence from the gallery. Beatrice sat at the defense table. She looked like a ghost of her former self. Her hair was dyed a dull brown, an attempt to look humble, and she wore a simple grey cardigan. No jewellery, no Birkin. She looked small. The charges were clear: filing a false report in the 3rd degree and disorderly conduct. The district attorney had refused to plead it down. They wanted to make an example. Beatrice's lawyer, a court-appointed attorney named Mr. Gorski, since Ricky had frozen her access to their family lawyers, stood up. He looked tired. "Your Honor," Gorski began, addressing Judge Maria Gonzalez. "My client is a woman under tremendous stress. On the day in question, she was suffering from a reaction to new medication. She was confused. She genuinely believed her property was stolen. This wasn't malice. It was a medical episode." Judge Gonzalez, a stern woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, didn't look convinced. A medical episode that resulted in racial slurs and demanding a strip search? "She never used a slur, Your Honor," Gorski argued. "She expressed concern about safety." The prosecutor, a sharp young woman named Ada Sterling, no relation, ironically, stood up. "Objection. The intent was clear, and we have the evidence to prove it. The people call Jeremiah Reynolds to the stand." A murmur went through the courtroom as JJ walked to the witness box. He took the oath, his voice steady. "Mr. Reynolds, the ADA began. "Can you tell the court what happened when you boarded Flight 902? JJ recounted the story. He spoke clearly, without anger. He described the sneers, the accusations, the demand for him to move seats. And when she couldn't find her earring, the ADA asked, "What did she do?" "She grabbed my hood," JJ said. "She tried to physically search me, and then she screamed that I had swallowed it." "How did that make you feel?" JJ paused. He looked at Beatrice. She wouldn't meet his eyes. "It made me feel like I didn't exist," JJ said softly. "Like my achievements, my ticket, my humanity didn't matter. To her, I wasn't a passenger. I was a suspect. I was a stereotype." The courtroom was silent. "Mr. Gorski, your witness," the ADA said. Gorski stood up. He knew he had a losing hand, but he had to try. "Mr. Reynolds, isn't it true you were wearing a hooded sweatshirt?" "Yes." "And isn't it true that hoods are often associated with hiding one's identity?" "It's a piece of clothing," JJ replied dryly. "Mark Zuckerberg wears hoodies? Do people check his pockets for stolen jewelry?" Laughter erupted in the gallery. Judge Gonzalez banged her gavel. "Order." "No further questions," Gorski mumbled, sitting down. "The people have one last piece of evidence," the ADA announced. "We would like to play the audio recording recovered from Mr. Reynolds's phone, as well as the cockpit voice recorder transcript provided by the airline." Beatrice flinched. The audio played over the courtroom speakers. The sound of Beatrice's shrill voice filled the room. "He looks like a drug dealer, Ricky. Search him! I want him in handcuffs! I am a sterling, I don't lie." Then came the moment of truth, the sound of the earring hitting the console. Clink. And Beatrice's voice immediately pivoting to, "He planted it." The tape ended. The silence in the room was heavy. Judge Gonzalez looked at Beatrice. "Mrs. Sterling, please stand." Beatrice stood up, her legs wobbling. "I have heard the excuses," Judge Gonzalez said. "I have heard about stress and medication. But what I heard on that tape was not confusion. It was weaponized privilege. You used the police force as a personal concierge service to humiliate a young man simply because you didn't think he belonged in your world." "I'm sorry," Beatrice whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I've lost everything. My husband left me. I have no money. Please." "You lost everything because of your own actions," the judge replied. "Mr. Reynolds lost his dignity that day, and he is the one who had to maintain his composure while you threw a tantrum." The judge looked at the papers in front of her. "The charge of filing a false report carries a maximum sentence of 1 year. Usually, for a first offense, I would give probation." Beatrice let out a breath of relief. "However," Judge Gonzalez continued, her eyes hard, "given the malicious nature of the act and the waste of police resources, and the fact that you showed no remorse until you faced consequences, I am not going to grant probation." Beatrice's eyes went wide. "Beatrice Sterling, I sentence you to 90 days in the Rikers Island Correctional Facility, followed by 300 hours of community service." "Jail!" Beatrice screamed. "Rikers! You can't! I'll die in there!" "You should have thought about that before you tried to send an innocent teenager there," Judge Gonzalez said, banging the gavel. "Bailiff, take her into custody." As the bailiff moved to handcuff Beatrice, real steel handcuffs this time, not the metaphorical ones of social pressure, she looked back at the gallery. She looked for her husband. He wasn't there. She looked for her friends. They weren't there. She looked at JJ. JJ stood up. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just watched her being led away, a tragic figure of her own making. As the doors closed behind her, Elizabeth Reynolds put a hand on her son's shoulder. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," JJ said, adjusting his cuff. "I'm okay. But Mum." "Yes? Let's go home. I have a new design for the London terminal I want to show you." They walked out of the courtroom into the bright sunlight of Queens. Justice had been served, but JJ knew the real victory wasn't the jail sentence. The real victory was that he walked out the front door, free and focused, while the woman who tried to stop him was locked in a cage built of her own prejudice. But wait. The story has one final ripple. Because while Beatrice went to jail, someone else was watching the news from a very dark place, and they had a score to settle with the Reynolds family that no one saw coming. 6 months had passed since the gavel fell in the Queens County Courthouse. The snow had melted, and spring was blooming in New York. Jeremiah J.J. Reynolds stood on a podium in a newly renovated hangar at JFK Airport. Behind him was a banner that read, "The Reynolds Aviation Scholarship Fund." He wasn't wearing a hoodie today. He was in a bespoke suit, looking every bit the future CEO he was destined to be. In the audience, hundreds of inner-city kids, mostly black and brown teenagers, looked up at him with wide eyes. They weren't looking at a victim. They were looking at a hero. "They will tell you that you don't belong," JJ spoke into the microphone, his voice echoing in the hangar. "They will look at your clothes, or your skin, or your address, and tell you to go to the back of the bus. But I am here to tell you that the only seat you need to worry about is the pilot's seat. You define your altitude." Thunderous applause filled the room. Elizabeth Reynolds wiped a tear from her eye in the front row. But while JJ was soaring, the final domino of Beatrice Sterling's tantrum was about to fall, and it was going to make a sound louder than a jet engine. Beatrice was released from Rikers Island early for good behavior, though the guards would argue she was released because her constant complaining was cruel and unusual punishment for the staff. She walked out of the prison gates with a plastic bag containing her grey cardigan and $42 in cash. No limo was waiting. No friends. She hailed a yellow cab, a humiliation in her eyes, and gave the driver the address of a small motel in Queens. She had nowhere else to go. She turned on the TV in her dingy room, hoping to find some distraction. The news was on. A breaking news banner flashed across the screen. Massive FBI raid on Sterling hedge funds. Ponzi scheme exposed. Beatrice froze. She turned up the volume. The reporter stood outside the very office building where her husband, Ricky Sterling, had worked for 30 years. Agents in FBI windbreakers were carrying out boxes of files. Authorities confirmed today that the collapse of Sterling hedge funds was triggered by a sudden liquidity crisis 6 months ago, the reporter said. Following the viral incident involving the CEO's wife, major investors, including Reynolds Global, pulled their capital. This run on the bank exposed a massive $500 million deficit. It turns out Ricky Sterling had been running a Ponzi scheme for a decade. Beatrice's jaw dropped. The screen cut to footage from Teterboro Airport. It showed Ricky Sterling, her husband, the man who had abandoned her to save his own skin, being shoved into a police car. He was wearing handcuffs. Mr. Sterling was attempting to flee the country on a private jet to the Cayman Islands when agents intercepted him. The reporter continued. Ironically, his flight was delayed due to a mechanical issue with the landing gear. He is now facing 20 years in federal prison. Beatrice sat on the edge of the motel bed and started to laugh. It was a manic, hysterical laugh. She realized the irony. If she hadn't thrown that tantrum on Flight 902, the Reynolds family wouldn't have pulled their money. If they hadn't pulled their money, the Ponzi scheme would have stayed hidden for years. Ricky would have stayed rich. She would have stayed rich. Her own prejudice hadn't just put her in jail. It had burned down her entire world. She had destroyed the very fortune she thought made her superior. Back at the hangar, JJ stepped off the stage. A young boy, maybe 14, wearing a faded hoodie, walked up to him shyly. "Mr. JJ?" the boy asked. "Just JJ," he smiled. "Is it true? Did you really take down a billionaire just by sitting in your seat?" JJ looked at his watch, the Patek Philippe that started it all. He looked out at the runway where a Delta 777 was lifting off into the clouds, heading for London. "No," JJ said, putting a hand on the boy's shoulder. "I didn't take them down. I just held my ground. The truth took them down. Remember that. When you know who you are, no one can move you." He walked out of the hangar and into the sun. The sky was clear, the turbulence was over, and for Jeremiah Reynolds, the flight had just begun. And that, my friends, is the story of Flight 902. It's a powerful reminder that class isn't about what you wear, or how much money is in your bank account, or what seat you're sitting in. True class is how you treat people when you think no one is watching. Beatrice Sterling thought her platinum status gave her the right to judge a stranger. Instead, she found out that karma has a way of upgrading everyone to exactly the destination they deserve. She lost her freedom, her marriage, and her fortune, all because she couldn't see past a hoodie. Meanwhile, JJ turned a moment of humiliation into a movement of empowerment. What do you think? Did the punishment fit the crime? Would you have kept your cool like JJ did? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold at 30,000 feet, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share this video with someone who needs a reminder that karma is real, and subscribe for more real-life drama and storytelling. Until next time, fly safe and be kind. Peace.